Alright, how's it going? This is my blog on Chapter 7. It's the impact of incarceration on community safety. I hope you have a good Halloween, all of you too. So Todd Clear starts out the chapter by talking about coercive mobility. In the figure on the next page, it shows how incarceration has a negative impact on pretty much all aspects, such as community, economic, family, stability, pro-social benefits, and parental capacity. And it's saying, this figure is saying that incarceration is supposed to suppress crime, but it'll have a very minimal effect. And we all know over time, crime will overall just start increasing again. In the next section about social disorganization as a theoretical context, Todd Clear talks about the strong correlation between inequality in society and the amount of crime, and he's saying that communities with not a lot of resources usually tend to be the ones with a lot of crime. The two viewpoints are saying, the contrasting viewpoints are, if the problem is inequality, then the remedy is to improve the resources, but people argue, how are we going to add resources to these environments when no one already has it? So they're saying that through police and school-related programs. Also within this section, he talks about mobility and how people who tend to have resources within these communities tend to not want to get attached to the community, so they tend to not see any relationship to be connected with the neighborhood, therefore not allowing their resources to help suppress crime. The next section Todd Clear talks about is collective efficacy, and he talks about what makes neighborhoods safe is how neighbors should know each other and know when to intervene. But within many of these communities, people don't have the resources, or they just don't have a concern, and they don't have enough willingness to help on the neighbor's behalf. The next section is the systematic theory, and in this section, Todd Clear argues that unstable neighborhoods cannot sustain relational networks upon which people rely for solving everyday problems. So there's no way of these people ever being able to gain networks because they don't have the resources and they don't know how to acquire the resources. The next section is the ECOM paradigm, and this is it stands for economic stress induced offender motivation. And in this section, Clear talks about how crime tends to be related strongly to economic stress. So low incomes, financial hardships, like long work hours, tend to be the people that are causing the crime. And also, this economic stress leads to poor parenting, which is like abuse, neglect, which would then lead to juvenile delinquency. So the juveniles will become involved in crime because the parents are not being a good role model. Figure 7.2, it shows how economic stress is an overarching effect that has impact on pretty much every aspect of people's lives. Next, Todd Clear talks about coercive mobility and how he talks about there's two effects on crimes. The removal of young residents for imprisonment is a mobility process that affects crime. It changes the density and spread of what Bursick and Grasmick have called secondary relational networks. This reduces the capacity of those networks to link the resources outside the neighborhood and bring them to bear on the problems of the people in the neighborhood. Therefore, it weakens the attachment to the neighborhood and ties to people and ties to the neighbors, thereby eroding collective efficacy. The second effect occurs in reentry, and it's more straightforward. Poor communities absorb a large number of these previously incarcerated people. Therefore, many of these people don't have any resources because they're worse off now than they were before. So it makes it hard for these communities to ever gain resources. Then he talks about how he tested it. He tested it in Tallahassee from 1995 to 1996, and he uses a quadratic model, and he's saying that if there's 2 people removed for incarceration in 1995, there would be 3 numbers modeled, 2, 4, and 8, and that would be over a period of time, so it's showing it increase in the later life. It shows how at first crime will be suppressed because you're taking away those people, but then as they get out, incarceration will go up, and they argue that it is argued that at low levels, removing residents for incarceration will have little impact on crime. At best, a small effect in reducing crime, but after a certain point is reached, the tipping point, those incarceration rates will begin to have a substantial effect on crime in the other direction, increasing it. Figure 7.4 just shows how the relationship between incarceration in the year, incarceration in 1 year and the crime the next year, and it's saying how it growed. One is linear. The number of people returning to prison has a direct and positive impact on crime. The neighborhood's crime rate can be expected to increase. That's one effect. And the second effect is a curvy linear, and at low levels of incarceration is unrelated to crime and has a small impact on it. But at higher levels of incarceration, crime tends to go up as the number of people removed for prison increases. And then in the table, it's just showing how the results, and it's saying in the Tallahassee study that on all crime, coercive mobility, they found curvy linear patterns consistent with the coercive mobility hypothesis. Let's see. He then talks about simultaneity, and this is the idea that crime rates cause incarceration rates, while simultaneously incarceration rates cause crime rates. So they're linear related. There's 2 additional methods for dealing with simultaneity, and it's one is to avoid it altogether by selecting a proxy-dependent variable. This is an approach that models the impacts of incarceration on an outcome that is not likely to be simultaneously the cause of adult crime. For example, juvenile crime rates, housing prices, sexually transmitted disease, voter participation would not be affected by adult incarceration. And then he talks about the one favored by economists is to employ an instrumental variable to isolate the portion of variance in crime that can be explained by incarceration by removing the portion of the covariance in crime and incarceration that derives from the way crime leads to incarceration, which would leave only the part that results from the way incarceration causes crime. Next, Todd clearly talks about endogeneity, and this arises when the relationship being displayed is spurious because both crime and incarceration rates are caused by another outside factor, another variable. They're saying that this is plausible because they're saying like economic stress is a perfect example, saying that crime is caused by economic hardships. The competition of the models, the first model is saying that the problem with endogeneity is incarceration rate. That incarceration rate is both um, a result and a cause of crime, and since crime rates at the neighborhoods levels are highly correlated across short time intervals, they worry that the use of violent crime as a core covariate does not fully control for this type of autocorrelation. The concern for this model is they need to find a way to parcel out portion of the correlation between incarceration and crime. That it is a result of the way crime leads to imprisonment. Then the time-ordered model, they say that it's the proponents is that the changes in crime rates come from the parts of the changing incarceration, and they say over that is a powerful way to show the direction to changes in data across time, so showing how crime increases in the long run. The critics of the time-ordered model saying that what is needed is a variable that is correlated with the independent variable, but not with a dependent variable, and then to remove all of the covariation between incarceration and crime that can be thought of as a way crime leads to incarceration. Then he talks about the ingenious way of avoiding problems. An ingenious way of avoiding the problems inherent in trying to model the correlation between adult incarceration and crimes. So he's saying an example of this is how adult incarcerations have effect on juvenile crimes, and the only way that'd be possible is that if the adult has a tie to the juvenile. So, like poor parenting would obviously cause juvenile crime. Yep, that's pretty much it. Alright, thanks.